Here are some of the wildest, most gripping stories ever told on the Joe Rogan Experience. Perfect to fall asleep to, if you like drifting off with your brain still spinning. From a terrifying mystery buried deep in the Grand Canyon, to a heartbreaking tale of a man sentenced to death for a crime he didn't commit, and even a first-hand account of a high-stakes hostage rescue by a former SWAT sniper. This is not your typical bedtime story. Let's kick things off with a mystery that's been hidden in plain sight. What exactly is going on inside the Grand Canyon?
Well, the whole Grand Canyon thing is bananas. Like, there's areas of the Grand Canyon you cannot explore.
You cannot go. You cannot fly over.
Right.
And you can't fly under the rim. Yet when you go to those bad places, suddenly a white plane flies over under the rim, black helicopters show up. I showed on my episode. I show the black helicopters showing up. Like, they do show.
Yeah. Like, they are protecting something.
Something.
It's not as simple as this is a dangerous area, because you can go to any dangerous area.
You go just to the normal tourist area. It's like, be careful. People fall. 2 people a year fall. Yeah,
someone fell recently.
They did?
Yeah, an influencer. Of course, taking a selfie. But the Grand Canyon, there's been these crazy stories of people finding these like these caverns with like Egyptian artwork and hieroglyphics and these stories of artifacts that have been removed from there.
So the story is, it shows up, I believe, in like the Phoenix Gazette. It's 1903 or so. And the explorer is G.E. Kincaid, and he's going down. He's looking for gold deposits or whatever. This is just before Teddy Roosevelt made the Grand Canyon a preserve. He was a naturalist. So he finds these steps that are clearly man-made. He follows the steps up, and there's a cave, and he goes in there, and he describes hieroglyphics that look Egyptian but are not quite. He finds a statue that he describes as like Buddha-like, not Egyptian, not human, but sort of like Buddha, and all these weapons, shields, gold, all sorts of stuff. He keeps going. He finds a deserted city in the caves, and all these tunnels and caverns go everywhere, and he's trying to map everything. He comes out, and he goes back to town, and he gathers together a group that we're going to go find the stuff again. And people are excited about it. And a couple of weeks go by, and everyone's gathered to go on the expedition. He never shows. The expedition goes nowhere, and that's really the last we've heard of it.
Well, and is there any photographs or anything? No.
There never is of this stuff.
Right, just descriptions?
Just a great story.
Well, the great part of the story is the fact that you actually can't go there. And the idea that there's an area where the military is protecting people from being foolish, that doesn't make any sense.
Nobody asks why.
Right.
Like, nobody asks why. It really bothers me about that story and all of these, whether it's disclosure or whatever. I don't hear anyone asking why. Well, they won't let us. Well, who's they? Right. Someone's in charge of stuff that's not the president,
right,
or Congress. So who is it? So,
is it possible there's some sort of a government installation down there somewhere?
It's all going to be woo-woo conspiracy stuff, or it's real. Or G.E. Kincaid found something and someone got to him.
But if G.E. Kincaid found something, why would they want to hide some ancient civilization discovery, particularly in the early 1900s? Like, why? For what reason?
I don't know why Graham Hancock is marginalized now.
Right, but that wouldn't you think that there's like less of a grip on that stuff in the 1900s, early 1900s?
I would think so.
Yeah.
So my guess would be treasure and money. That would be my guess. Is it shows up in the paper, the government goes down there, like, there's a lot of stuff down here, let's grab it, send it to the Smithsonian, who keeps 99% of the stuff under wraps. They have, a billion items that nobody can see, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah, but what the fuck? Which I would love to know the official reason. See if you can Google. Is there an official reason why you're not allowed to go to certain areas of the Grand Canyon?
They use a VPN there, brother.
The story, I was looking at an article about the original article, and it says that the 2 guys mentioned might not have even existed.
Right.
There's no evidence of them.
G.E. Kincaid?
And another guy named S.A. Jordan.
Oh, so it might be just a story that someone printed? Some horseshit?
Yeah, when I was looking into one of these things before, I found something explaining that back in the early 1900s, when newspapers were a really popular thing to read, I don't know if it was like a game or if there was actual prizes people would play or like amongst themselves to try to get fake stories printed. If you could get the craziest story printed, you win like $500 or.
I might be wrong, but I think Jordan was connected to the Smithsonian, at least according to the story.
I pulled this from the Smithsonian debunk, which, I mean, obviously they would if this is the way we're going to go with it, but them debunking this, and they gave 2 links, one to the original 1909 article and one to a 2008 update, and that's where I was pulling that from.
I don't trust the Smithsonian. They're exempt from all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, like there's a law passed not too long ago that if you have Native American artifacts that are important to that culture, especially burial artifacts, they must be returned. Unless you're the Smithsonian, then
They're allowed to hold on to
then
them?
you can make a case that you don't have to give it back.
How do they have so much power?
It's a government agency.
Smithsonian is a government. Oh, I didn't even know. I thought it was a private agency. So there's no official story as to why this area of the Grand Canyon is off limits.
For your safety,
The
is all
forbidden zone, they call it.
Yeah, that's all I can find.
That's
I'm looking
fucking
into
weird.
that.
That's fucking weird. That this story comes from the very area that's forbidden. That's fucking weird.
I think
What are the odds?
I don't believe in coincidences, so a lot of these stories come from places you just can't go.
Has anybody tried to hike in?
All the time.
Wear
Or
camo?
raft in
Yeah, did they get busted?
and busted, yeah, and arrested.
Really?
You could find
Fuck,
you could
man.
find online. I wish I knew the names of a team that went up there. That's who found the black helicopters, and I used them in the video, and I credit them. So you can find their videos. They're up there for an hour and a half, trying to find stuff. And what they found up in that forbidden zone is anchored into the ground a giant hook,
Right.
or like a loop.
Yeah.
Like,
I
what
saw
would
that.
you use that for? And that would be to rappel down. That's the only reason that would be there. There's no explanation for what is this. They also found artifacts from that era, from the early 1900s, artifacts that people were there. So it's possible that they rappelled that, like they might have been standing right above that entrance. And there are reverse angles of that rock face that look a little weird. It could be pareidolia, but
What's pareidolia?
pareidolia is the mind's ability to see objects in random noise. You know, it's something we evolved to, to see predators in the forest. That's why if you see a cloud that looks like an Abraham Lincoln,
Right.
it's not Abraham Lincoln. It's pareidolia. But debunkers will always fall on pareidolia. So like the real believers, they hate that word.
God, that would be. Imagine. Everything would have to be rewritten. If they found some evidence of a lost civilization with no connection to any known civilization that was advanced, that was living in the Grand Canyon.
Did you ever think about going?
To the Grand Canyon?
To go and just be an outlaw and go see.
How would you get in, though? I mean, if they have black helicopters and they're scanning the sky or scanning the ground with some sort of a drone or a plane, how many of these crashed crafts do you estimate there are that human beings have recovered?
More than 10.
More than 10.
More than 10.
How many of them are in possession of people in the United States?
I'm at more than 10 in possession of the United States.
What about worldwide?
Worldwide,
Do we have any data on that?
we have data, but it's classified. There's no way to really talk about it.
But so there's more, though. You could safely say it's not just the ones in the United States.
Not just the ones in the United States, and these.
Are they equally distributed?
I actually don't know for sure in terms of data. I mean, we have our best data, of course, on our own retrievals.
But more
It's
than
hard to
10
say.
retrieved in the United States.
More than 10 retrievals.
What is your take on Bob Lazar?
Well, we looked into the Bob Lazar story, and but only from a certain relatively superficial level. Looked at we found out what his clearance levels supposedly were, and so on, which came back saying it was not high enough to be doing what he says he was doing. On the other hand, it may just simply be, it was better than that, but we didn't have the access to see that. So when I hear his physics descriptions, it's a puzzle. It seems not exactly as I would anticipate might be the technology behind the craft, but I can't absolutely write them off. So it's an enigma, and I don't have any hard data to prove one way or the other. So it's I know you've talked to them. And,
Yeah. It's a fascinating puzzle.
It is a fascinating puzzle.
Because that would be the place, S4 would be the place where they would do that kind of work. I mean, if you wanted to do something like that in complete privacy and secrecy, you'd do it in the middle of the Nevada desert, very protected.
That's true. Right.
Outside of Area 51.
So even when people that have high clearances go and say, well, tell me about this. What's behind this? Who knows? If it's a special access program, an SAP, it might be, say, no, we're going to tell you that, he didn't do anything of significance here. In fact, he might have done something of significance. There's just no way of telling from the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the actual generator, the thing that powers the craft that Lazar talked about, what was your take on that? This idea that it was element 115, that when it encounters high radiation, it has some sort of an anti-gravitational effect, some warp effect.
Well, there are two aspects. One is, what is the material or mechanisms that generate the effects? And then the other is, are the effects being described reasonable descriptions of the kind of effects you think are associated with such craft? On the element 115, as you know, in the general scientific community, we've seen element 115, but it's very short-lived. So it's hard to evaluate that, and at this point, there's no evidence that's it. But his description of the anti-gravity effects and so on, that's an area that is well described as what you might expect. As it turns out, in that series of 38 papers, one of my own papers that I provided was one called Space-Time Metric Engineering. And when the pilots came to me and said, drops down, takes off, right-angle turn at Mach 10, this is way beyond our physics. And I said earlier, no, I think it's not beyond our physics, beyond our engineering. But what I did on the physics level was all of our electronics that we have here, for example, this microphone, the recording that you're making, and so on, that's all based on electromagnetic kinds of technologies, all of which come out of Maxwell's equations. Maxwell's equations, Clerk Maxwell way back in the 1800s developed the equations for electromagnetism, and basically any kind of electromagnetic device, you name it, Wi-Fi, whatever, can be traced back to his equations. So what I said to myself was, okay, we have these apparent craft operating with this unbelievable kinds of activity. Is there any way to account for that in our physics? Well, it turns out. So what I did, I took a sheet of paper, and the left-hand side of the paper, I wrote down all the weird effects that have been claimed. Right-angle turn at Mach 10. I got close to the craft, and suddenly it wasn't the same size as it seemed to be when I was further away. It was a certain color, but when I got close to it, it was a different color. All these weird things. To me, the weirder the better, because if somebody was just making up a BS story, they want it to sound rational. So you don't come up with things like, well, I got in the craft, 5 minutes went by, I came out, and 2 hours had gone by. I mean, you're just not going to make that up. Then on the right-hand side of the piece of paper, I said, okay, we have Einstein's equations in general relativity, and we use them to talk about black hole mergers or neutron star mergers or whatever. And all these things are massively energetic events. Suppose I could engineer Einstein's equations the way we engineer Maxwell's equations for electromagnetic effects. What would I expect to see? And I find out I got a hand-in-glove match between what was claiming to be observed and, what Einstein's equation, if you could engineer them. Well, why can't we engineer them? Well, what we know today is the energy density required to engineer those equations it's just way beyond our ability to do so. So,
Can you give me a comparison to what the energy requirements or something like that would be like?
yeah, people have in fact, Alcubierre warp drive. I don't know if you've heard of that, but Miguel Alcubierre was a researcher in general relativity and kind of a Star Trek fan and so on. And he said, I wonder if we could really have warp drive. And so he used Einstein's equations to say, okay, under what conditions could we do a warp drive? And he actually came up with solutions from out of the equations. Okay, what would it take to drive that? Oh, it would be hundreds of times more than the energy of the sun. I mean, just out of sight energy. So, until we have a new energy source, or until there's some back door that we haven't, zeroed in on, it's just really outside of our expertise.
Next up is the jaw-dropping story of Nick Yarris, a man who spent over 2 decades on death row for a crime he didn't commit and lived to tell the world about it.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Put the ear cups on and cheers, sir.
Oh, man. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thank you for bringing me out here, man. I know we meant to do this before, but I hope now with all this good energy between us, we can do this properly for your audience.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, man, to say that you've had a crazy experience in this life is one of the most understated things a person could ever say. I mean, where do we begin, right? Let's tell everybody your story. So you were wrongfully committed of murder. You spent 22 years on death row before you were exonerated by DNA evidence.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Yarris, and I was, as Joe said, convicted and sentenced to die for a rape and murder I didn't commit at the age of 21. In 1981, a woman named Mrs. Craig was murdered in Delaware. I had never met the woman. I was in prison on unrelated charges, and I stupidly made up a story to try and get out of those charges. The police soon realized that I was a liar, and they fabricated the charges around me then. So it's ironic that in a few days you're going to Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. And that's where the murder happened, really, basically. And Linda Mae Craig was leaving her job at 4:05 p.m. on December 15th, 1981. She's going home. She gets abducted. I don't know any of this, but I tried in desperation to get out of a lie that this officer put on me. I got pulled over in a stolen car. The cop beats me up. He puts charges on me. I'm facing life imprisonment, and I'm a junkie. Because all of my life I was destroyed by what happened to me at the age of 7. I had my head beaten in by a man with a rock in his hand after he sexually assaulted me. And I did all the stupid things that people can do in the aftermath. I kept it a secret. And I let it foster all the anger in me. I became very aggressive as a child, and I ended up in trouble all the time. And when I was in prison on these unrelated charges to the murder, I stupidly fell into that mindset of desperation of trying to get out of it. So the police put a prisoner in the cell next to me. He said I confessed to him. I was given a 3-day trial. I was sentenced to death and put on death row. And then, stupidly, I escaped from prison in 1985 and ended up on the FBI's most wanted list.
How'd you get out?
I was being transported to court, and the sheriffs were being cool with me at first. They were talking about what was going on in Philly. They were two nice guys, like 68, 67. And we drove 5 hours from one of the hardest prisons in America called Huntington. And I left there after spending 2 years of my first 2 years in silence. So if you opened your mouth, they would come in and beat your head in. So I was so glad to get in the car because my mom was waiting in my lawyer's office because they were going to give me a review of my trial because they withheld so much evidence. So I was eager to go to court. And it was the coldest day of 1985, February 15th. We stopped at a gas station in Exton, Pennsylvania. And as I got out of the car, the officer driving pulled past the cubicles. Now, we all got out of the car and ran over to the cubicle together, and I went in and started peeing. And the officer's holding the door for me, and my eyeglasses start fogging up. You know what I mean? Because you go from the freezing cold to the warm to the cold, your eyeglasses. So all I know is I turn around and I come out, and he has the door like that, and I put my head down, go under his arm, and I turn left and go back to the car, and the dude smoking a cigarette doesn't know that his partner went into the cubicle to piss. And as I'm running back to the dude, he pulls his pistol out and point blank shoots at me, Joe, like, pow. And as it went past my face, I was like, oh, shit. I hit the ground. I ran, and he's following me with the gun. I could feel it like I was waiting for him to blast me, you know.
Why did he shoot at you?
Because he thought I overpowered his partner.
Oh.
He doesn't know. His testimony at trial was, I turn around, Nick's running at me, my partner's down or gone. I pulled my gun and he runs, and I wasn't going to let a death row prisoner run, so I tried to stop him. I shot. So I run around the corner, I hit the ground, I ripped all the skin off my hands. I run around the corner and I fly towards this restaurant, and there's all these people innocently eating dinner. And I'm running right towards the plate glass window because he ain't going to blast me, you know? And I ran like I knew he couldn't shoot. And then I shot around the corner, and I ran down to a gas station. I tried to steal a car. That didn't work. Then I ran like 400 yards, 400 yards, 400 yards, and I hid behind the car I just escaped from. And I was laying in the weeds behind the gas station about 50 yards from them while they were screaming, who was the bigger idiot for letting this happen? And I was thinking, oh my God, like, what am I doing? What do I do, Joe? How do I just jump up and say, wait a minute, it was a mistake? You know, they already tried to shoot me in the face.
Right.
So I go hide behind the police station, and next 4 hours, oh my God, I'm being chased by a helicopter. And he chases me, and he pins me, and he chases me. And I was so fit that I ran for 4 hours through the woods without care what the branches did to my face or nothing, man. I blew out both quads. I did my hamstrings. I ripped my feet open. I ran so hard in terror that I didn't care, man. And I got away. And I made it all the way to Florida, and I was going to leave the country and all this. And I said, I got to go back.
How did you get to Florida?
I stole a dude's wallet in New York, and I got on an airplane, and I went down to Florida, and I tried to rob a drug dealer. And I tried to do I was sitting there. I was so angry. I was going to kill myself. I was on, I'll never forget this day. I didn't want my folks to see me in prison handcuffs no more, you know. So I was going to buy a raft, and I was going to go out in the ocean, and I was going to have one last party with all the foods that I loved. Then I was going to stab the raft, wait for the sharks after I cut my wrists, you know. And then I was going to cap myself and go. Then I said, no, I'm going back. So I turned myself back in. They put me on death row in Florida, and I went back and I faced it, you know. So they beat me for 4 minutes, man. They broke my face, broke my back, crushed me, man, tortured me. And I thought, I'm going to get you back, you know. For all the days you made me go in a cage and beat some other prisoner while you stood there with a club laughing at me, I'm going to get you back. I'm going to make sure I start being a loving person again. So I'm sitting there in 1985, 1986 with 105 years plus the death penalty. And I decided, fuck this. I'm going to be a nice guy. So I started to learn, okay, I suffer from aphasia. I had my head beaten in with a rock. So
What is aphasia?
Aphasia can be identified simply in people who have stuttering disorder. Their brain and their vernacular abilities are distorted by a disruption in their brain. Either their brain is functioning too fast or their mouth is functioning too fast, or there's a combination of it misfiring. And aphasia can be through trauma or through genetics. And aphasia affected my life so much as a young person, I never had the respect to listen to people because I couldn't function, I couldn't articulate, I couldn't speak. When I was at trial, people spoke words that I didn't understand. And it frustrated me. And when I tried to speak and I'd stutter, people would be like, duh, 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 come on, retard, what do you got to say? So, after that beating, where they beat me for 4 minutes and they broke my face, I began practicing speaking to myself. Every day, I learned new words, and I taught myself how to correctly articulate that word into a sentence beautifully for my own self. In my cell every day. And then I became very, very good at writing. I began helping other prisoners. I became the most dangerous prisoner that they held because I cared about other men. I wrote to their mothers. I wrote letters to their lawyers. I gave up opportunities for people to write books about me so I could help another innocent man. I did all those things because that's how I got back at them for what they did to me. So in 1988, I'm sitting in my cell and I read about DNA. And I knew right then I could prove my innocence. So I was the first man in America in February of 1988 to ask for DNA testing to prove my innocence. And they threw away all the autopsy material. And when I discovered new evidence, they destroyed that. And this woman who came to meet me and start visiting me fell in love with me, and she believed in me. So she stood by me and told me that she would be with me either to the gallows walk or to the moment I proved my innocence. And for 9 years, she stood by me, you know. And finally, we found some evidence that was testable in 1995.
What was the evidence?
It was sperm from a rape. And it was being sent out here to California to Dr. Edward Blake. And it broke open in transport and spilled. So Jackie left me. I had nothing left. And then they put me in a special unit. And it started torturing me. I keep this part quiet. I never told the story. It would ruin what happened in Fear of 13. It's now out on Netflix. But they finally closed down the old prison I was in for 12 years, where the average rate of survival was only 5. And I was one of the hardest dudes there, and I made it. They closed the prison down, and they opened up Greene County Supermax. And the courts ordered that every prisoner in Pennsylvania be allowed out of their cell for 8 hours. The administration looked at each other and said, fuck that, not the crazy cannibals and not the serial killers, not the dudes that have been assaulting and raping each other. So they picked 48 of us out and they put us in Pittsburgh in a special penitentiary setting in which we were in a sealed unit. And they put all these guards in there that weren't allowed to touch other prisoners because they were so violent, and told them, we're giving you the craziest of the crazy. You know Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lamb was a real man, right? His name was Gary Heidnik. He abducted black women in Philadelphia and put them in a pit under his house and fed one of them to the other survivors because he was building a master race. He was my neighbor, man. So they started torturing us and doing all this psychological crazy shit to us where they were feeding us to each other like wolves. So I kept it all quiet until this year when, once again, misfortune fell in my life and I released Monsters and Madmen, the new book that I was going to give you today. And I thought, I got to tell that story, you know. But it's been so hard to come back from these moments, Joe. It's just like I look at what they did to me and how I went to that moment where the DNA is gone. Jackie leaves me. And so I find out I'm dying from hepatitis C that they did when they infected me of it when they broke my teeth, when they beat me. So I asked to be executed. I said, I studied all the world's religions. I read over 9,000 books. I did everything in piety my mother asked me to do while I was in prison. I don't want to die like Dale Carter did, with the guards coming to his cell and taunting him, you know, teasing him, and listen to a man scream in agony because the bile in his belly is killing him. So I wrote to the courts and I asked to be executed. I said, fuck it, man. I want to die as a man I love who can respect himself. The court intervened and ordered the DNA testing that was going to be done on the evidence expelled. In July of 2003, the DNA test come back and they proved me innocent.
How did the evidence spilled and they just captured it once it spilled?
It was in a box with all this evidence, and Dr. Edward Blake, who did the O.J. Simpson trial DNA, said that there would be challenges to it if he did the DNA in 1999, 1998. In 2003, they had advanced mitochondrial DNA separation so well that he felt confident in his results. So the federal court got involved and said, look, I don't want to have this man executed. I want the DNA done. So they did that, and it was amazing that on the day that I called the lawyers, they revealed the truth to me. I called this lawyer and I'm like, what's up? He goes, Nick, we got DNA from 3 separate sources that prove you innocent. And I said, that's amazing, Mike. I'm really grateful. He goes, you know, we used to tell people you're crazy, that we never believed in you. I'm really sorry for that. Like, man, really? You want to take away my joy now, man? So I was really downcast that the day I called my mother. My brother Mikey was having a seizure at her feet because he was an alcoholic after he fell off a roof, and he died shortly after, so it just went fucking crazy from there. They take me off death row, and they put me in a psychological cell, and they tell me they can't trust me. That no human being who has had done to them what we've done to you cannot be angry. That if we open this door up and we let you out, you're going to get us. So we're going to leave you until the day they let you out. We're going to leave you in this cell because we don't trust you not to kill us for what we did to you.
What did they do to you?
They used to have a thing called Gladiator Day. So the lieutenant would be off on a Sunday, and the guards who started to come from the Philadelphia area were black, and they didn't like the guards up in the hillbillies beating on black prisoners. So a weird thing happened where this lieutenant came up with an idea, well, look, let's let the prisoners get this frustration out of you guys by you pick out the biggest guy and you pick out this guy. So one day I'm sitting there minding my own business, and they open up my cell, and there's 4 of them with clubs. You're up. So I got to go in the cage, and I got to go and hurt somebody while they stand outside. And if you don't fight, they're going to come in, and they're going to beat you worse than you can beat a man or get beaten by one man.
So they did all this for their entertainment. Were they ever punished for this?
Not until after the riot, when one of them testified against the others for the murder and stuff. I watched 11 people commit suicide. I've been stabbed, strangled, beaten senseless. The guards used to taunt me because I was accused of a psychological murder, of going out and stalking this poor woman because she looked like my girlfriend, they said. So I was never treated like a prisoner. I was treated with deference, the worst word I know in the English dictionary. The way I was treated was so harsh that it was cruel beyond cruel. And yet, all I wanted to do was have enough within me to learn to beautifully speak so that on the day that they executed me, I could tell them how much I cared about myself. That was more important to me than living, because somehow when you suffer like I have suffered, your head cracks open and you have a hypersensitivity to life, so that when you touch other human beings, you never forget the 14 years no one was allowed to touch you. You know what? Fuck this. I ain't crying no more.
It's all right, man. There's nothing wrong with crying.
No, I just thought about it. You know what, Joe? I do, because I feel bad for the heart.
You shouldn't feel bad
because
about
I look in
crying.
your arms and your eyes, and I see the hurt that I'm causing you for doing this.
No. Don't worry about that, man.
All right, well, this is what I know.
All I'm doing is trying to imagine what your life has been like. Don't you worry about me at all.
I'm harder than life, and I'm kinder than love. Secretly, I'm a saint. I never hurt no one. I try my best to be polite every day. And I've had misfortune at every turn. And I'm very sorry that I sit in this chair today after it came about. You see, I believe in good. I believe good is going to win, Joe.
And finally, hear a former SWAT sniper recount the most intense hostage situation of his career. A real-life scenario that sounds like something straight out of a movie.
When it comes down to like life or death stuff, that's where, you know, you're a very determined person, just in the way that you live your life. It's Cam, very determined person, right? So that's how you get to where you get to. It's the first ingredient in this whole control factor, is having enough determination to do that. And like, you have a why. You have a why as to why you're doing this. My why was, I was scared to death, man, in the sniper world. I was like, man, I hope it doesn't go bad. And I'm like, that can't be the mindset.
Right,
Holy
can't be
mackerel.
the mindset.
But it is the mindset of most cops, because they don't have a why. You know, if a cop's never been in a gunfight or a shooting, their why is artificial, right? And it's scary the first time that you do that. You know, having that why and seeing, like, I was in an HR where I, you know, had to use lethal force on a person that was, I had to put around this far from another human being's face, right? And that's my why. So when I do training on the team, it's like, you guys don't understand when you're looking through your optic at a reticle and there's somebody's face on the edge of their face is fully in your scope and the reticle's right on the edge, right? And you have to put the round past their head. That's your why, right? So that's your why for all this tactical training that you do. But if you've never been there and done that, you have to learn how to manufacture determination, right? Can you imagine what failure would be in that situation?
Well, tell the story, if you don't mind, the story you told me about the guy who was methed out.
Yeah, so got a SWAT call out of a hostage rescue. There was an unarmed, barricaded subject with a hostage. And you never know. That's all the information you get on the call out, right? So we go there. I get there, and it was weird because on the brief, I walked up to the house, and the SWAT commander briefed me at the head of the garage there, and it was light-colored concrete. It's dark. You know, we didn't have a bunch of lights on because the operation is active in that house right there, but the room was in kind of the back of the house. And I remember he's talking to me, telling me the situation, and I'm looking on the ground, and I'm like, what is all that stuff on the ground, right? And I'm looking at these dark patches on the ground. So I turn my flashlight on, and it's blood. There's blood all over the place on the walkway down from the garage. And I'm like, what is up with that? And he's like, well, this guy stabbed his cousin and then took his own daughter hostage, used her as a human shield with a knife to her. So that's how SWAT got called and all this stuff. So I get there, and I'm up on a ladder over a wood fence, and I'm only like 15 yards from the window, but we can't see anything in the window. And the negotiator's on the phone with this guy, and he's not really making a lot of sense. He wants to talk to his girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. He's got his daughter in there with him, and we can hear her through the wall, right? We can hear her. Sometimes she's screaming, sometimes she's crying, sometimes she's laughing. So we don't know what is going on in there, right? And this goes on for, the negotiators are on the phone with him for a while. And then finally the decision's made, like, we have to get in there because it's starting to go south in negotiations. And we lost comms with the guy.
So you're worried he's going to stab his daughter?
Yeah. Well, he's already done that to his cousin, right? I mean, stabbed him in the face and the legs and the arms, big K-bar knife. It was not a good situation. So, yeah, and he's already used her as a human shield, right? When the cops, what happened is there was a big fight went on. The cops got in, got everybody out. Then they realized the daughter was hiding behind a couch. So they go back in, they restack up, they go back in. Now he's got the daughter around the waist, using her as a human shield, knife to her, and he kicks the door shut on a bedroom. That's what starts the SWAT call out. So I'm looking in this window. It's got blinds on it. You know, negotiations are going south. We lose comms with the guy. So finally, we're like, we got to get comms with this dude. So we're going to put a throw phone in. So we put a throw phone. A throw phone's like a box. Got a phone in it so the negotiators can talk to the dude. And so we put that in there. My buddy rips the blinds out. When we rip the blinds out, there's the dude again. I can't see him because I can only see like half the room. And he's in the right corner of the room, and I'm over this fence. And the window guys are yelling at him to drop the girl, drop the knife, you know, they get him all the commands, and he's kind of working his way along the wall. He's got her around the waist, so he would hold her up above, you know, so they can't get a shot. And so he's moving his way across the wall, and then he moves his way across this wall and ends up in this corner, sits down and pulls her up over the top of him. And so the window's on the same wall as this corner, and I can't see any of this stuff. I'm the sniper team leader, so I work my way around, and I get to this gate. I'm like, they called fire priority to the window team. I'm like, I'm on the wrong team, right? So, because there's like 6 dudes at the window, and nobody's shooting. I'm like, why in the F are these guys not shooting? Because I couldn't see what they saw, but that's what's going through my head. So I get off the ladder, I run to this gate, and it's weird, the stuff you remember. They had this, it was like one of those latch type of locks, and it had a bolt through it with the nut all the way buried, and this bolt was like, it felt like it was this long, right? So I'm having to unscrew this freaking bolt, right? I'm screwing, it's the finest threads I've ever felt, right? So I'm unscrewing this bolt. Finally, bing, I get that. I go through the gate, I come around, I come up to the window, and there was another officer that had basically his face planted against the window so that he could just barely see through this sliver because it was on the same wall. And and he wasn't shooting, and I'm like, why are you not shooting? And so we actually end up having to remove him off the ladder because I don't know what he was thinking. He wasn't hearing us. We were giving him commands to get off the ladder so I could get up there and evaluate the situation. And I'm shooting my sniper rifle was it was a gas-operated 308, and lowest power on the scope was 4.5. And I told the admin years ago, I'm like, I need lower power because it's going to be close probably when it does happen, and sure enough, it was. So I get up on this ladder and I put my face against the wall, and I can just see through the sliver. I can see him sitting, and I can see her sitting in his lap basically, and he's got his arm around her. And so, the team keeps giving him commands, and I'm looking at this shot, and I'm evaluating what's going on, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to have to shoot him left-handed. And I'm thinking lowest power is 4.5. So I do an optic check on the wall. I'm like, that ain't going to work. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to have to shoot him with my pistol.
When you say optic check, it's because it's moving too much?
No,
because
because
too much magnification?
too much magnification. So there was a picture, something on the wall. So I brought my rifle up and looked at it. I'm like, that ain't going to work. It was just blurry. It's 4.5 power. The shot's only 11 feet, like 12 feet, 11 feet.
God.
So I'm like, I don't have the right tool. So I'm thinking, I'm going to have to shoot my handgun. And then I'm thinking, I always preach, handguns suck for killing stuff, right? So that's why I always tell my guys, handguns suck for killing stuff. We don't use handguns if we don't have to. But I'm thinking, I got the wrong tool. What am I going to do? So I'm thinking, wait a minute, stupid. There's 6 guys standing at the window that have the right tool, right? Because they all have their assault rifles. And so the first guy, and it just happened to be the guy that we pulled off the ladder, I'm like, give me your rifle. He's like, what? I go, give me your rifle. So we swap rifles, and he says HK 416. And the reason that he said that was because on an HK 416, if you flip the safety twice, you go to full auto, right? So don't want to do that in a precision environment, right? So I'm like, roger that. And so I got up, and the window's broken at this point. So when you step up to the window, you're literally walking on broken glass. Okay, so I step up, pop, 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 pop. The glass all pops underneath my feet. And I push the rifle. I got to shoot left-handed, right? So I push the rifle in, and I come around the corner. Now the rifle butt is in my bicep with somebody else's rifle, right? But I know this rifle is zeroed because it has to be zeroed, because to get through my qualification a month earlier, it had to be zeroed, right? So I knew that things were good. But I also knew that you got to aim 2.5 inches higher than where you want to hit, because that's a mechanical offset, right? Difference between bore height and sight height, 2.5 inches. So I push the rifle in the window, and I come around the corner, and I look, and the little girl's looking right at me, right? Because all the broken glass. So she's looking right at me, and I bring the reticle up, and it's full pop brightness, right? I can't see anything because he had it set for a white light shot. So when you turn your super bright flashlight on your rifle, it will blare out your reticle. So you got to have your reticle turned way up. Well, he had it set for a white light shot, but I wasn't going to do a white light shot. So I looked at him like, oh no. So just like you're thinking your thing didn't turn on when you're looking at this nil guy, I'm looking at this red sun in a dimly lit room, and I'm like, this ain't going to work. So I pulled the rifle back out of the window, and now I got to work on the buttons on this sight. Well, this isn't my rifle, right? So now I got to find the button that dims the red dot. So I'm messing around with this thing, and the whole team is outside, and they're watching this, right? Because they're going to go on my shot. Now, this dude had the door barricaded with a TV and a TV stand, all that stuff. So they were going to have to hit the door hard, but they were going to get a running start at it. But I moved them out because they were right on the other side of the door, but I didn't know if my round was going to go through the wall or not. So I moved them out. So we got them out. So they're all watching this shit show, basically, of me on this optic. And they're thinking, what are you doing, Turner, right? And I'm thinking, I'm like, I just got to get this thing turned down, right? So I mess with the buttons, and I finally get to the right one. So I'm like, okay, good. So I go back up to the window, you know, glass breaks again, pop, pop, pop underneath my feet. I come around the corner.
Does this guy know you're there?
I don't know, because he was, I mean, who knows what kind of mental state he was in. And I was trying not to be too, that's why I didn't turn on any lights or anything. So I come around the corner again, and I look in there. I'm like, okay, I got the right brightness, but it's too close, right? Like her head was like an inch, because what I'm looking at is this. So like this is the back of her head. I'm looking at his eyeball.
Oh, wow.
So I got like an inch. I'm like, nah, it's too close. And remember that so this was in December. A year earlier, it was 364 days after I made that decision in that tree stand when I mapped things, right? So now between December of 14 and December of 15, now I have control of what's going on. And I made that vow, right, long ago that I'm not going to shoot an uncontrolled shot. So I come around the corner, and I'm looking, and she's, of course, looking at me, and it's close. I'm like, nah, I ain't going to do that. So I'm waiting. And then he moves his head back, right? I'm like, okay, 2.5 inches of mechanical offset, but his face is all covered in hair, like this giant mop of hair. So I couldn't see the geography of his face at all. Like I'm going, I want to put it in his eyeball, but I can't see it, right? So I'm just going by the curvature of his forehead. I know I got to aim 2.5 inches over that. So I put it up there, safety's off, fingers on the trigger, and it's a 2-stage trigger. So I took the first stage out. Here I go. I remember saying that. And then when I'm working on rifle stuff, it's kind of an audible exhale. So right. So that's my concentration guidance. So I put it 2.5 inches over where I wanted to hit. Safety's off. Takes the stage out of the trigger. Here I go. And he moves his head back. Right. Bunk, and he pops it back against the back of her head. And it's funny the stuff you remember, because I remember his hair swishing, right? And so now he's back, and it's too close again. So I'm like, I'm waiting. And he moves his head back again. So he moves his head back again. Now I've got better, it's faster for me to aim where I need to aim. So I put it where I need to. Stages out. Here I go. And the shot broke, and the rest is history. So but
worst case scenario in terms of tension, in terms of consequences.
Right.
Methed up guy,
right.
Knife to this girl.
Right. I mean, it's just that was the culmination of everything. That was the start of Shot IQ. Because now I'm like, this is no bullshit, right? This is how to concentrate in high stress events, right? So, and it was cool because I had lots of high-level military operators that I was able to bounce ideas off of. Like, because I'm not getting in gunfights every day. So I go, hey, man, is this real or is this not real? They're like, yeah, how'd you figure that out? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just a dumb cop, man. Just thinking, And so I was able to bounce things off of people that had been there and done that. And that's, when you're looking for solving a problem, you have to find those people that have solved it before. But it's so rare to find somebody that solved it before and blueprinted how they did it. That's what's rare in the instruction and just in life in general. There's lots of mentors out there that have been there and done that in whatever field you're looking for. But did they blueprint it?
And that's it. 3 unbelievable Joe Rogan stories to fall asleep to, if your brain lets you. Hit like, subscribe, and sleep well. Or at least try to.